Sorry, forgot I was muted.
Okay.
Too many little windows all over the place.
Oh, I hear you.
How have you been?
I've been doing all right. How are you?
I think. Launched the symposium this morning, so fingers crossed that well.
I'm excited. I'm excited I'm going to get to go to more than I normally do because I can watch them whenever.
Yes, I'm looking forward to that. I hope that we get a lot more people signing up, but we have a pretty good amount right now. So it'll be fun to see.
Yeah. I've already embarrassed 2 of my tutors by telling all of the tutors that they have presentations. So.
Yes, we've got to get the word out. I really want to see a lot of students coming through. And I'm talking to one faculty member who saw the value of having the students sit in on a couple of these so they can learn how to connect themselves to research.
Yeah. No, I think it'll be really cool.
Let's see. Still only 4 of us, but we got 4 minutes. I'll ask all of us to introduce ourselves really quickly, and then maybe ask them to submit some of their questions via chat.
Sure.
I'm sure if we go along or see at the end.
That sounds good.
Okay.
I apologize it took me so long to get back to you with the PowerPoint. It was one of those ones I thought I'd replied.
Oh.
And then I was like, oh.
I know, I was like, is she gonna do it with me? I'm on my own.
No, I just was like, oh yeah, I'm doing that. So. Yeah, the only real change I made is I took out some of the slides because we have 3 panelists and I want to make sure to leave them lots of time. So.
Let's see. You still don't see our panelists.
Speaking of.
So how are you dealing with being at home?
I'm doing all right. We have it easier than most. It's just my husband and I. We live in a house in Sundance, so for 2 people, we have tons of room.
Oh, yeah.
We don't have elderly relatives to worry about. We don't have kids. I have a cat who may join us for this. This is the biggest problem I've got is cats.
Yeah.
So.
Trying to get my mom to go out with the pups because if they hear something, they start going wild.
Yeah.
Be quiet. Okay, here's Tyler. Let me get him in.
Hi, Tyler.
Hey guys, how you doing?
You came right in.
I did come right in.
Okay.
That was okay.
Make it a little easier for me. I think I have to let people in. I don't know.
It didn't say anything on my end. It usually
Oh,
does.
it
It does.
Oh, okay.
How are you guys doing?
Good.
How are you doing with kids at home while you're trying to do your school stuff?
Almost impossible. Yeah. So they take up all my time during the day, and then if I can stay up, then I do work. I don't know. It's been hard to get anything done. Yeah.
One of my tutors has a 4-year-old who's home, and she's just like, this is.
Yeah. Now tack on an additional 3-year-old, and that's where I am. Yeah, I have the 4-year-old. She's in a little tent watching.
Ah.
Oh, how cute. Well, you're not having to teach them.
Luckily, my fiance, she's been doing the schoolwork with them because they were in daycare before this. So they do have them doing things for preschool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But they're very.
And the hardest part is keeping up with your work and also being a teacher.
Yeah. And they just constantly want attention, and it's understandable.
Mm-hmm.
Hard to do work.
I was telling Gladys, I have it pretty easy. It's just my husband and I. Right? He plays Fallout and takes care of that, and I don't have to worry about him.
That's nice. Yeah.
So we may have cats joining us. They do like to participate.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's nice.
Well, I got one in here with me, so we'll see.
Christelle is here.
Yeah.
Hi, Christelle.
Hey everyone,
How are you doing?
good. How are you?
Good. Love your background.
Thanks.
For a second there, you almost fooled me.
Yeah, they have really nice phones on UCR website.
Yes.
My computer, well, okay, this computer isn't strong enough. It doesn't have enough processing power to do the virtual backgrounds. That computer does, but that computer doesn't have a camera. So you all just get to see my office.
Yeah, mine for some reason doesn't show backgrounds. And I once got it to do the ocean on my window, which looked really cool. That's as far as it does. Oh, Nicholas is here. Hi, Nicholas. Welcome.
Hello, how are you?
Good, thank you. Okay. I think we are just about ready to go. So welcome, everyone. Can you guys all hear us? We should be good. Okay.
Yep.
My name is Gladis Herrera-Berkowitz, and I'm the Director of Student Engagement Programs. And one of my jobs is to work with students on applying for prestigious scholarships and awards. So I welcome you to our presentation for the NSF Graduate Research Fellowship Program. This is an amazing program. And I want to start off by having my team introduce themselves to you. I'll start with Jennifer Kavetsky.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Kavetsky. I'm the coordinator of the Writing Support Program at the ARC. And one of the many things we do is we support people who are applying for the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship Program. If any of you are grad students, there's actually a separate graduate writing center on campus. I can put that information in the chat if you would like it. But we work with, so you can work with us. We kind of are a complement to Gladis, who she kind of helps you with the whole package. We help you focus on the essays. And we are here all summer, so we can definitely work with you.
Very happy to have 3 of this year's fellowship recipients. So I want them to introduce themselves, and throughout the presentation, we're going to ask them to give you some of their input on how they went through this process, any tips, advice that they would give you. So I want to start off with Tyler.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tyler Smith. I'm a 4th year physics undergrad. I'm an NSF recipient. I work with Dr. Yanao Sui in the physics department on gravitational wave theory, and I also work in collaboration with JPL on high contrast imaging of exoplanets.
And Tyler, where are you going to school next year?
So I'll be attending UCI for my physics PhD.
Christelle.
Yes. Hi everyone, I'm Crystal Alvarez. I'm a first-year PhD student, but I did my undergrad at UCR as well in mechanical engineering. And I work with Dr. Guillermo Aguilar, and we work on making biomedical devices in his lab, and also use optics as well.
And Nicholas.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nick Higgins. I am a 4th year bioengineering student. I work with Dr. Morgan, working with cell stress tolerance, as well as Dr. William Grover, working on microfluidic devices. And I am going to be doing my PhD in bioengineering at the UC Berkeley UCSF joint program.
Well, thank you, everyone. We're going to get started with our presentation, and if you guys like, you can type in any questions in the chat box, or at the end we are going to allocate a little bit of time for you to ask questions. So we're going to get started. Let's see. Okay, so the National Science Foundation Graduate Fellowship Program is an NSF funded program that its goal is to support the nation's leadership in advancing science and engineering. So basically they're looking at who are the up and coming leaders in science and research, and they want to support these individuals to concentrate on their academics while they're in graduate school. So they will fund any student that is looking to pursue a research-based master's or doctoral program in the STEM fields. And the funding is very lucrative. As you can see, it's $34,000 annually for a stipend for 3 years within a 5-year period. And they also pay for all of your tuition. And there's some additional funding to allow you to go to conferences and really just be an active researcher. The great thing about the NSF Graduate Research Fellowship Program is that as an undergraduate, you have 2 opportunities to apply. And we highly encourage you to give this a chance during your senior year. Submit your application, because if you're funded, absolutely fantastic. If you're not, NSF is very good at giving you feedback as to where your strengths and weaknesses are, so that when you get to graduate school, you have another opportunity to do it. The other thing about this is that when you're applying as an undergrad, you're competing against other undergrads. So your research proposal doesn't have to be as fully fleshed out as a student who's already in a graduate program. They're going to put much more emphasis on understanding every aspect of it and every detail. So now you have a little bit of flexibility because you are proposing a research project based on where you think you want to go to school and so forth. So there's a little bit of easier opportunity to do it as an undergrad. Okay, so why apply? I think the funding speaks for itself. The NSF is a very prestigious award. It really starts a trajectory for you to win more awards as you move along in your career. But again, as I said, there's $34,000 stipend. This award is given to you. So you can actually take it with you to any university that you want. We've had instances where students are being considered for other universities, and as soon as the university finds out that they've gotten the NSF, they get this offer. We had a student that had been accepted to Yale, but unfortunately they didn't have funding for her, but when she got the NSF, it gave her that opportunity to go to Yale. So it just opens up so many opportunities for you. The other thing is that it gives you experience in writing a proposal at a national level. I think that the students will attest to you that this is something that is very, very challenging. You are given limited space to say a lot about yourself. So I'll have them talk about that a little bit later on, but that's one of the things that we want to expose you to this award now, so that you have plenty of time to prepare yourself and invest in writing. And this is why Jennifer is a great asset to us, because she's very good at helping to pull things from you. Not only will Jennifer be an asset, but you also have to build a team around you. Your faculty members, people in your lab, anyone that you know that has gotten an NSF. Use those resources to help you in looking at you, having several eyes looking at your proposal. Okay, so the eligibility guidelines are: you must be a US citizen or a permanent resident US national. You have to intend to pursue a graduate degree, research-based, in the field that NSF supports. I will share with you that we had an experience, Jennifer and I, with a person who applied for the NSF and then wasn't sure he was going to get it, and for one reason or another, it decided not to apply to grad school and got the NSF. And so it was a very stressful situation where he was like rushing to try and get into a program because you have this amazing award and you didn't apply to grad school. So don't do that. Make sure that you do your applications, and this is just icing on the cake for you. You have to be enrolled in a US program by fall of 2021, and you have to complete, not have any graduate work under your belt for that time period. Graduate students, I think you can apply within your first 2 years of grad school. Okay. There we go. Okay, so the deadlines. Unfortunately, NSF has not posted their deadlines for 2020, but you can see that for certain fields, they're in late October is what you're looking at. So I would plan around the dates that are here. just know and checking their webpage periodically until they get it updated. But this is really critical because they're also due, as you can tell, by 5 p.m. Eastern time. So that means 2 o'clock our time. If you're a person that waits till the last minute, know that it's 2 o'clock California time. They have so many applicants that if you miss it by a minute, they will not consider you. So plan accordingly.
Can I actually add something really quick, Gladys,
Yes.
on the previous one?
Yes.
So they have, at least as of last year, they've updated it so applications are due by 5 p.m. local time as determined by your mailing address for you. So if you are home and home is not California, do keep that in mind. 501, they will not let you in. However, they've kept the letter of rec deadline. Again, this is all from last year. The letter of rec deadline is 5 p.m. Eastern time, which is 2 p.m. for us. So I actually recommend telling your professors it's due the day before, because that can cause some problems. And as Gladys noted, we deliberately did not update these dates to be for this year. They should be right around those times, but we won't know until they officially announce what the deadlines are. Sorry, Gladys.
No, thank you. Okay, so application components. You have a personal relevant background and future goal statement. They give you 3 pages to talk about, tell us about your background and what your goals are, where you expect to be, what you've done to ensure that you're going to go where you want to go. That's 3 pages. Then you have your graduate research plan statement. This is your research proposal. That's 2 pages. There's also 3 letters of recommendation and your academic transcripts. Again, I can't emphasize enough that it's really important to start working on these components as early as possible. 3 pages may seem like a lot to you. It is not. It gets very tight in wanting to present yourself in the best manner. Your research plan, you want to make sure that you are speaking to your faculty member. If you know where you want to go to school, maybe talking to that faculty or that team to make sure that you're writing a proposal that's strong, because it's going to be read by people that are experts in those fields. So they will know if there's any gaps in your proposal. So again, allocating time so that several people can be looking at this. The letters of reference, it is really important, and this is where I work with students carefully on identifying who are going to be your letter writers and what are they going to say. As I mentioned, this application is very, very stringent, and you want to make sure that someone is covering an aspect of your application that you're not able to cover. So as you're writing your personal statement, there might be things that you want to say but just don't fit in there. Maybe somebody who knows you and is writing that letter of recommendation can attest to that, or bring in information that you are not able to say in your statement, your personal statement. Also think about people that are going to look at you from a different angle. Maybe a professor who will speak to your academics and how you do in the classroom with them. Your research PI is going to be really important to talk about your dedication in the laboratory, what accomplishments you've made, how you work as a team, how you work independently. All those are very important aspects to cover. And then a third letter can, again, be maybe another collaborator in the research, or another faculty, or if you're a leader in some organization, someone that can attest to that aspect of it. Jennifer, do you have anything to add to the section?
One thing I do want to note is NSF has expanded, so you could submit up to 5 letters. They're only going to read the first 3. That can be really handy if you have a professor who's a bit flaky. You might be able to have a 4th professor there as a backup. Unfortunately, I have worked with students who didn't get this in previous years because their professor missed a deadline. So that is something to keep in mind. You can have more than 3 letters, but they're only going to read 3, and I think you rank them in the system. I want you to read these 3 first. But that is something, if you know you have a professor that's a little dicey, you can have that backup.
Do our panelists want to say anything about the letters or any aspect of the application?
Definitely ask for them early on. you don't want to ask a week before it's due. And then
No.
just do it.
Yeah, I bugged all my professors about getting on it several weeks in advance, and then I even emailed them a week before and then 2 days before for one professor who didn't get there. Yeah, but I also have actually a counselor write it, which is they usually like advise for having your professors write it or people who like can witness you in like those situations. But I felt like I was getting a stronger one from a counselor, so he actually became my third one, and he actually wrote all my letters of rec for grad school as well. So don't count those out.
I want to add one more thing about the deadline. Because UCR comes back so late, we come back very close to when these things are due. So I would not wait until fall quarter to ask your professors. And professors have a nasty habit of disappearing and not checking their emails over the summer. So it might even be worth it to talk to a professor now before the quarter's over and tell them you're thinking about this and applying in the fall. Would they be interested, and could you get in touch with them over the summer? Because you don't want to wait until we come back in practically October to ask them.
Yes, very good advice. The other thing is, don't be shy about telling your professors what you want them to focus on. So that way you're ensuring that, again, they're not repeating the same thing in that letter.
All right, so the name of this essay is long, and usually we just call it the personal statement, but is the personal relevant background and future goals statement. The official prompt is kind of long, but please outline your educational, professional development plans and career goals. How do you envision graduate school preparing you for a career that allows you to contribute to expanding scientific understanding, as well as broadly benefit society? Describe your personal, educational, and/or professional experiences that motivate your decision to pursue advanced study in science, technology, engineering, or mathematics. Include specific examples of any research and/or professional activities in which you've participated. Describe the contributions of your activity in advancing knowledge in STEM fields, as well as the potential for broader societal impacts. So we'll drill down a little bit more on what this means on the next slide. Okay, so there's basically three parts. There's the personal statement part that's a concise story that introduces you, your personal investments in doing your research, and your work's importance in academia and beyond. And then this is designed to be done in person, so you have to hit the button again, Gladys.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. So basically, who are you and why should NSF fund you and your research, right? They want some sense that you are invested in this, and your work is interesting and engaging. And your work does not have to be like, I'm going to cure cancer. In fact, it probably shouldn't be. We'll get into that. But basically, why is your work interesting to the scientific community? So you've got that. You've got then your relevant background, which is a track record of academic and leadership excellence that highlights your potential. So basically, they want to know, especially for undergrads, that you are going to do well in graduate school, right? So you're going to talk about your academics, you're going to talk about your research experience, leadership if it's relevant, kind of showing them that, especially for undergrads, what they're looking for is potential to make a significant contribution. So you want to show them you have a track record that shows I'm going to be doing well. And then last but not least, future goals. That is research-oriented career goals and your plans for continuing your transformative work. Gotta hit the button one more time. So they do want some sense of your plans for the future. Nobody expects undergrads, or honestly even first or second year grad students, to have everything figured out, right? Nobody, oh, I'm going to be a tenured professor at MIT by this point. Nobody knows. But one, you should definitely be planning to go to graduate school. You should say that because they want to fund graduate school, but they want to know somehow, they want to know where you're going, that you have some sense of a plan going forward, the kind of research you want to do in graduate school, the kind of researcher you want to be, and that your goals align with their goals. I think that's it for this slide. There we go. So I should also clarify, I put this PowerPoint together and I am amused by this cat, and Gladys was nice enough to leave the cat in, so thank you. So I will take full responsibility for the silly cat pictures. So especially for the personal statement, think about what made you the person you are today. This could include your personal history, family background, education experiences, both good and bad. Sometimes bad experiences are what motivates us. Professional experiences, we don't see this as much with undergrads, but it's still sometimes relevant. Research projects, you're going to talk a lot about that. I'm sure our panelists can tell you that we talked a lot about their research. Leadership opportunities, volunteer experiences, cultural experiences, because NSF kind of wants this whole picture, not just of your research, but you as a person and your ability, again, your potential is really what we're looking for. For the NSF, you're mainly going to be focusing on the things that just got underlined: personal history, education background, previous research, leadership, and volunteer. Those are going to be the ones that are kind of most relevant to NSF, but the other stuff still absolutely goes in. And I've worked with successful applicants who have talked about that other stuff. It's just those tend to be where we focus. Okay, the next thing people worry about is, okay, you said I have to have a strong academic track record, but I had a problem one time. So you may have a speed bump. You hit a speed bump in your academic career. So one thing I do want to stress is do make sure you have a problem. I was working with a young lady who was applying for NSF as a grad student, and she had a 3.95 as an undergrad, and she was determined to expend a paragraph explaining the B she got as a freshman. And I could not talk her out of it. That is not a problem, you're fine. So, but let's say you do have a problem. One of the ways you can check and see if your problem is significant, so what is the competitive GPA is going to vary by field. How much research experience is considered normal is going to vary by field. I'm gonna pick on poor Tyler here because of the kind of research Tyler does. His field tends to research a little later in their undergraduate careers. Whereas engineering students tend to start researching much earlier, right? So normal varies. Acknowledge the flaw, but don't dwell on it. Don't give them long stories. Don't try to justify it. Just say what happened. So state the problem exists and then focus on what you did to move past and overcome it. I think if you hit the button, we get some examples. So although I began conducting research relatively late in my undergraduate career, I've begun working with Dr. Smith to study endangered Atlantic salmon in the, I can't actually say that, estuary ecosystem. My responsibilities include, despite some academic missteps during my freshman year, I received top marks in my per division courses. I've also begun conducting research under the supervision of Dr. Smith. And I did actually bring a show and tell to kind of highlight this. So this is my dad's master's thesis. So the first time my dad went to college, he failed out. He just kind of wasn't ready, didn't do very well, failed out, rode his motorcycle across the country, joined the Navy, came back to school. And then as a grad student, he got, I don't know if you guys can see on the camera, an NSF fellowship. So you can absolutely hit a speed bump, drop out of college the first time, and still get funded. And then maybe someday your daughter will use you as a cautionary tale in a presentation. Now, you don't have to join the Navy to kind of show you've overcome it. But he did, when he came back, he had to do better. He had to be able to point to, yes, once I got a little older and took school more seriously, I did much better. But yes, you can absolutely fail out of college and still get NSF.
Great. Let's see, before we go to the research statement prompt, do our panelists want to say anything about how they approach the personal statement or any advice?
So I can add on that. I didn't have a good GPA as an undergrad. I didn't focus too much on explaining that, but I did ask my PI, that was a letter of recommendation person, to expand on that. So he was able to explain that even though I didn't have a good GPA, he saw like how much work I put into research, and that's mainly what they cared about. And once I got back my reviews, they did notice that and they wrote that in the comments. So I didn't put that in my personal statement because I didn't really have that much space because I wanted to talk about other things. But yeah, that's what I have.
Yeah, and that's a perfect example of, as you start putting your application together, you'll find areas where, again, if you have a very strong letter writer, they can address issues. You don't have to deal with it in your essay, and it gives you more room for other things that you want to expand upon. So that's a perfect example. The other two panelists?
So if you do say anything like a speed bump, I definitely recommend spinning it as a positive. So I dropped out of high school and I didn't return to college or I didn't go to college until later in like maybe 7 years later, but I made it a point to say like, oh, this has made me a lot more motivated and, you know, just kind of spin it positive and don't, let it run your state.
Well, and Tyler is being humble. It is a positive. He is a little older and more mature, and he chose this field. So it is a positive. But one of the things myself and my colleague at the ARC and Gladys, we can all do is help you kind of frame it that way, right?
Yeah, definitely go to the ARC and go to Gladys, 100%.
Nick, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I have my actual personal statement here. I was going through it, and you know, this is one of my first original ones that I wrote for like grad school and everything like that. And you know, I didn't have anything to highlight really, and like I feel like that made like less of a story in my entire or personal statement. And I just feel like getting across ideas that you think are important to you are the best way, especially if like, you know, like I have no big story for just like that you read like in these great personal statements sometimes, and I feel like I didn't have anything like that, but I just got across everything I wanted them to know about me, and I think that's just the key to a good one.
Okay, so the other thing I just want to emphasize with all these essays, start early, because I think that every panelist here can attest to you that what they started off with is completely different than what they ended up submitting. You're going to go through several drafts. There's ideas, there's components that you're going to take completely out or bring back in version 5. So that's where Jennifer and I will be available to help you with that piece. So I'll turn it back to Jennifer. Talk about the research statement.
Yes. So you get 3 pages for your personal statement. You only get 2 pages for your research statement, and that is inclusive. That includes citations, that includes images. Our panelists who've worked with me maybe can talk about how hard I will fight you on those pictures. I don't fight you that hard, but I'm always like, do you need that picture? So let's take a look at the prompt. So present an original research topic that you would like to pursue in graduate school. Describe the research idea, your general approach, as well as any unique resources that may be needed for accomplishing the research goal. You may choose to include important literature citations, address the potential of the research to advance knowledge and understanding within science, as well as the potential for broader impacts on society. So one thing I do want to stress, especially for undergrads, you guys actually have a slight advantage. So you have to present this topic. You do not, well, not even the grad students, but you do not have to do the topic you present, that you write about. Now you should write about something you would want to do if all the stars aligned, but you were applying for this before you've even applied to grad school. You don't even know what lab you're going to be in. So really what you're showing is you know what a graduate level research proposal looks like. The other thing is you also don't have to do nearly as much to show you were in the right location as grad students, right? If Tyler wanted to do something that required a particle collider, I know you don't, but the fact that he was at UCR that doesn't have a particle collider is less of an issue, right? Because all he would need to do is show that he was a strong enough candidate that he could get into a program that would give him access to a particle collider. So you don't have to work nearly as hard as the grad students to be like, yes, I'm in the right spot, because you're not in the right spot, you're still an undergrad. So do kind of keep that in mind, that for undergrads especially, what you have to show is your potential. Grad students are expected to have more concrete stuff to offer, so they have to demonstrate that.
And sometimes it's nice if you have an idea of where you want to go, that you might mention, you know, the top programs I'm looking at are Berkeley, Stanford, and UCLA. Maybe even being specific enough to say Professor so-and-so at this lab. That sometimes can show how committed you are to working in this particular area, and that you know who's doing the work you want to do.
All right, so generally with these, there's gonna, Not all research statements are going to look like this, but honestly, most of them do. So generally you need some sense of the research area that you're going into. What is it? Why is it worth studying? So NSF is interesting. So it's not, you're not going to be read by anybody. It's not like any of you who applied to the Chancellor's Research Fellowship where you could be being read by an English PhD such as myself. You're going to be being read by people in your discipline and in your field, but maybe not in your subfield, right? So you're not going to have to explain what DNA is, for example, but if you get very specific, they're not going to know what you're talking about, right? So the example I use is I study golden age science fiction. Most of you probably don't know what that is. I would need to explain it. Even within English, I might need to specify what golden age science fiction is, or at least when it is. With science fiction folks, I would not need to explain because they know. So you gotta want to think about like people who do something very similar to what I do, but not exactly what I do, what are they gonna need to know? So I think we have to hit the button again. Sorry, Gladys.
That's no problem.
So they do want some sense of how your work connects to current research in your field. So how is it different than what's been done already, and how does it contribute to your field? This is sometimes where research statements go off the rails because you guys are used to doing those big long lit reviews and we only have 2 pages. But they do want to know that you know what is going on in your field, right? And this is another way they assess, what is your potential? Are you informed on what's happening in your field, and does your work make sense within that? And then next button, there we go. What question or hypothesis are you investigating? Believe it or not, you'd be surprised how many first drafts I read where I'm like, so what are you actually studying? You can, depending on your field, have something that says hypothesis and underline it. But you do want to make it very clear, this project will study, because they're reading these things very quickly. They're reading hundreds of them. You do not want them going, I wonder what Crystal's looking at, right? You want to know. You want them to know. Methods and procedures, this is going to be different for everybody, but what you're trying to show them is you have a project that is going to take 3 years to do, and you have a realistic timeline, right? You do not have to have it like, I'm going to spend 2 months on this and 2 weeks on this, but some sense of like, here are the stages, and this is how I'm going to kind of get through it. And then one last. Some sense of your anticipated results. Now, you may not know what your anticipated results are, and this can be difficult, but I usually tell people, regardless of whether you get a positive or negative result, you're going to learn something about your question. That's kind of what they want to know, like, how will you essentially know it worked or didn't work, right? Oh, well, we'll learn that you can't actually study 2-dimensional materials that way, right? So that's still something you'll learn. And then I think one more. So I think our next slide is going to talk about the review criteria, but you do have to talk about review criteria in both of your statements, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And maybe to our panelists, does this about how you guys did your, outlined your research statements?
Yeah, just about.
Okay. All right, so I guess next slide. Short words and short sentences. Scientists, I love you. My dad is a scientist. I swear you do not write 4-line sentences. Right? Again, they're reading it very quickly. This may be adjacent to their field, but not exactly. The other big thing is you want to, so I know you've all been trained to say the experiment will determine. The experiment is not getting funded, you are, right? We got to keep that in mind. This is about you and your potential. It's actually not about the research. They're not funding the research, they're funding you. So you want to say, I will experimentally determine, right? Make sure it's about you and the focus is on you. We've talked a little bit about the jargon, but yeah, so a biochemistry panel might have reviewers that specialize in neurochemistry, toxicology, and molecular chemistry, right? So they're going to know what the periodic tables is and how many valence electrons carbon has, but they may not know specifically. I actually don't know any biochemistry. I just used all my chemistry words. They might not know your specific thing. And as we said, you do not have to do the project you propose. which especially for undergrads can be very exciting. They're going to be confused if you propose physics and then do biology, so don't do that, but they're not going to like, oh, you said you were going to do neurochemistry and now you're doing toxicology. That's usually fine. And this, I might actually pick on Crystal. So NSF and health-related research. So if your research has potential applications for human health, you want to be very careful because the NIH has more money. So NSF gets kind of skittish. Can you hit the button, Gladys? Mm-hmm. So you want to avoid explicitly disease-related goals, right? You're not going to be treating anything. You're not going to be running clinical trials. And you do have to be careful with animal models, right? But what you're trying to avoid here is something that the NSF would think you should be applying to the National Institutes of Health because they have more money and then NSF can give their money to other people. Then I think we've got a couple more on this slide. So what you really want to look at is basic science applications. And because honestly, the chances that you are specifically working on the cure for cancer is pretty small. So you're maybe learning about molecular structure or various kind of things within that. And then one more. So there is a little bit of an exception for bioengineering because bioengineering is in this weird category. You're still mainly focusing on an engineering question, but bioengineering get a little bit closer to kind of medical related, especially if it's to aid persons with disabilities, but you do want to be very careful. And so maybe Kirstel, who I think you said your research was kind of biomedically related. Do you want to speak about, did you talk about that in your NSF proposal?
Yeah, so in my lab, I currently work on we're developing a transparent cranial implant. But I mainly did that research for undergrad. So for my NSF application, I wrote about using titanium nitride nanoparticles for photothermal therapy in breast cancer. I know you said not to write about cancer, but I mean, it's a little piece of that field. But I mainly focus on like showing that these nanoparticles can be like biocompatible and how we can use lasers to create this photothermal therapy. So that's mainly what I focused on. I didn't write about any animal studies or anything like that.
Yeah, and it's not that your research couldn't potentially have benefits for human health, but much like Crystal said, she focused on the other part of it.
Yeah.
In her presentation. And this can be a little bit of a hard line to hit. And so this is a really good time to talk to Gladys, to talk to me, to talk to the Graduate Writing Center. If you're a graduate student, we can kind of help you navigate that.
Since you're a bioengineer, how did you handle this?
So I was on a very similar track. I kind of mixed. The idea is something with related to cancer. It's like angiogenesis, so it can also be started like in early fetal development. So like that's the background, but the actual focus I did in my paper was on mechanical stresses on like early cells that develop into things like cancer or things like early fetal development, like vasculogenesis and stuff like that. So the background idea is there for health purposes, but all the focus was on the mechanisms and the core foundation of it all.
Right.
Okay, so you've heard us talk a little bit about review criteria, intellectual merit, and broader impacts. So you have to talk about both of these in both essays, and you actually have to have sections labeled that. This is a relatively new change, so if you look at grad students from even 3 or 4 years ago, they may not have this. You still have to have it. So intellectual merit can be lots of things. So intellectual merit can be, why does your research matter to your field? Why are you specifically should be funded, right? What do you have that's interesting and unique? What are your qualifications, and can you actually carry this out? So ways people talk about this is how the research will contribute to the field, how they themselves have done well academically. Kind of maybe they've presented or published, that can all count as intellectual merit. Broader impacts is kind of what is the larger impact? So how would your research benefit society? So engineers have it a little easier because they build things that they can point to. Tyler and I had to work on a way that wasn't like an in conclusion aliens, because that's my background, science fiction. That's what I wanted to write for his broader impacts. How would your research benefit society if it's relevant? Also, how would it benefit other fields of research? So I did 1940s science fiction. I did robots in 1940s science fiction. So engineers are not interested in 1940s research or 1940s robots. But I could argue that historians might be interested in some of the stuff I found about how people's understanding of science developed kind of in this crucial period. That would be a broader impact. And you yourself can be a broader impact, right? Maybe you are helping to kind of mentor the next generation of scientists, kind of by working in the lab. Maybe you help run a club that does that. So kind of lots of things can be broader impacts. One of the things when we get into these a little bit more later on in the summer at different workshops, I have a whole list of things you can kind of think about that match for these two criteria. So you do kind of have to think about this, but there's lots of ways to successfully address these two criteria. So don't freak out. Do any of our panelists remember how they addressed these criteria?
Yes, I can add to the broader impacts. So mainly what my research would benefit would be that it would create like a low-cost alternative for cancer therapy, but I also use that how I'm involved in the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers organization and an undergrad research club. And I was also a transfer student. So I included how I'm involved in all of that. And by being involved in all of those organizations, I can provide opportunities with my research to provide like research opportunities for undergrads.
Yeah, I can add to that. In my section, this is kind of where I started to hit that bigger idea of where it can apply to. So I mentioned cancer, but I try to stick away from that to give other ideas. So like a lot of the vasculogenesis, I give the idea of like tissue grafts for burn victims. That expands out my other ideas. But then I also say, yeah, I'm part of several clubs that bring research projects and ideas to them. And this is all just stuff I built off of. So I'm in Engineers of the Future. So I bring science experiments to kids around the area. And there we go.
Yeah, adding to that, I also, talked about the club I was in. So CAMP, the California Alliance for Minority Participation, which I recommend any undergrads joining. Super helpful, getting involved with research. And I used my experience being the outreach coordinator for that to kind of talk about broader impacts. Also the data that I've used from NERC2 from the Keck telescope and CGI data from the W1st mission. I use that to talk about how I would develop like kind of a workshop for students looking to transfer, because transfer students have a harder time getting involved with research. So I was like, oh, we can use that data and get them some research skills. So when they approach professors, they're able to say, I have some experience coding.
Tyler, do I remember correctly for yours, we also talked about how the algorithms you developed could potentially be used for other large data sets? Am I remembering you correctly?
Yeah, so W1st is the mission I work on right now, and it's a Pathfinder mission. And so it'll help with other NASA missions such as HabEx, and LAVOIR, which will directly image rocky exoplanets. And so they can use the imaging pipeline that I'm creating to kind of use as their backbone. Yeah, which is good.
Because we couldn't actually say aliens.
Yeah, so you can look for biosignatures by performing spectroscopic analysis on the exoplanet atmospheres. So aliens.
That one, I was like broader impacts, aliens, and no, that did not fly. All right, and so our panelists have already talked about this a little bit. The NSF really is committed to broadening the participation. of underrepresented groups. So diversity can mean ethnic diversity, but it can mean lots of different things. So if you're the first in your family to go to college, if you took a non-traditional route to college, which includes transferring, right, as Tyler already noted, and I think Crystal kind of alluded to, when you transfer, it can be hard to kind of hit the ground running with research opportunities, right? Are you part of an underrepresented group in your field? Unfortunately, even though it is 2020, women are still not fully represented in the sciences. So that could be relevant to kind of what you want to do. In fact, I think last year I freaked everybody out by asking them how many female bio faculty there are, and there's like 3 at UCR. So you also, does your research focus on or benefit underrepresented groups? That can be relevant. What are your experiences with diverse groups of people? This is one of the great things about UCR. If you're in a club, if you're in a lab and you've mentored other undergrads, you have worked with diverse groups of people. So diversity is not a bad word. It's something you do want to highlight, especially with the broader impacts. But sometimes people think they're not diverse enough. You do not have to be Harry Potter, right? You do not have to come from a broken home, be an orphan. I'm sure a Horcrux is some sort of disability, right? You do not have to be that fancy. You in your own small way are making the world kind of a more diverse and welcoming place is really what they're looking for. It does not hurt to be the boy who lived, but you don't have to be. I don't think Harry Potter got the NSF, not being an American citizen and all. I think he couldn't. So this is usually where we get a bunch of questions. Do people have any questions about this?
No.
Okay.
Quiet group.
Okay, so we also wanted to do some myths and facts, and my dad was a geologist, so I actually grew up looking for, I grew up out west and we went looking for like fossils and stuff. So for our myths and facts, I had to find a dinosaur cat, so this made me very happy. So one of the big myths is students should wait, and because people hear graduate research fellowship, they're like, oh, you have to be a graduate student. And then you'll hit the button, Gladys. You are judged against other undergrads, and as Gladys already noted, undergrads are the only people who get to apply twice. So it used to be grad students could apply twice, and now grad students can only apply once, right? So, and the cool thing about NSF is you get feedback. So you can use that, even if you don't get it, you can use that to apply the next time. So undergrads get to apply. You can apply once as an undergrad and once as a grad student, and you can use the feedback you got as an undergrad to make your grad application even better. Do you want to add anything, Gladys?
No, I think, again, I said it earlier, it's an amazing experience to be able to get the NSF as an undergrad because you can take it with you. So it makes you much more competitive for many graduate schools. It also helps the graduate school that's taking you because if they were funding you, you're already coming with money. Oftentimes they will top off your award and give you additional funds, but the majority of what they were going to give you, they're able to give to another student. So it allows them to expand the class they're bringing in. So they really want NSF funded students. And again, like I said earlier, this starts building this trajectory that you need to have, demonstrating that you are getting funded for ideas. You're now going into the graduate field. If you can come in with a big award already, that's going to open up lots of opportunities for you in your professional career. So this is outstanding. And like Jennifer said, try it. There's nothing to lose. The only way you're not getting this is if you don't apply. You never know. Submit your application, go through all those drafts, use that same statement of purpose that you're using here, you're going to use for grad school. So it's a win-win.
And then we already talked about the next one, that you have to do the research proposed in your application. You do not, even grad students don't have to, but especially undergrads. Now, ideally you should want to, but I think, and maybe our NSF folks can attest to this, it's a form you fill out, right? You have to update them and you're like, turns out I'm doing this, right?
Yeah, I think we have to update it like every year.
Yeah, I think you can't change like your field the first year though.
Yeah,
Like,
I
I think you
think
can
those,
change past physics and high energy, but not like, oh, I'm going to go from physics to engineering.
yeah. And again, they're funding your potential. That's the big thing, especially undergrads. We really want to stress this is your potential to do transformative research. So sometimes people worry only the strongest students receive the award. Not necessarily what, and I think Nick already talked about this a little bit, enthusiasm seems to have a lot to do with it. If you're passionate about your research, they can tell that comes through, right? And, you know, give it a try. And then same with, you can only apply to NSF GRFP once. You can only, as a grad student, so some of your professors would be like, oh, you can only apply once, you should wait till you're a grad student. You can apply once as an undergrad and once as a grad student.
Anything? Yeah, I saw you raise your hand. No. Okay. So those essays that we've been talking about are extremely critical because they're reading all of those. This is where you can stand out. And again, you don't have to be the 4.0 student. You can say, you know, I had these mishaps in the beginning, but I got into my research and now I'm so passionate about it that look at all these things I've accomplished and look at how I'm looking at the future and making plans to use this research in this manner that's going to help society. That's what they're looking for. Those letters of recommendation are critical. I can't tell you enough. You're going to be competing against other students who have dynamic applications. Sometimes those letters of recommendations are what tip the application to a positive or a negative. So again, make sure that you work really closely with the people that you're asking letters of recommendation from, that you give them information to help them do the best job in your letter. So provide them with your transcript, provide them with a copy of your personal statement, provide them with a copy of your proposal. Some people have time and love to review and just kind of take that red marker and go at it. Others don't have the time, but they're reading it and it goes in the back of their mind when they're writing that letter of recommendation. And again, that's where they're going to be able to really attest to how wonderful you are and why NSF should make that investment in you. So invest in all of those components, keep people in the loop. Share your essays as you're developing them with them and say, hey, I just wanted to let you know that this is where I'm at with it, and leave it open as to whether they want to give you feedback or they just want to see it to help them write that letter.
I added all these cool transitions in and it doesn't work as well via Zoom.
Let's see if we missed anything. Yeah, I think we went through all of this.
All right. So getting started, definitely meet with your professor, PI, mentor, tell them you're interested in this. They can help you assess if you're ready. Depending on your field or where you are, you may or may not be ready. There's no shame in not being ready, although we obviously think you should go for it. Begin writing the part you feel most comfortable with. So many students, I tell them actually start writing about your research experiences. That's much less terrifying, right? To talk about the research you've done than to try to figure out why you personally want to study this. Talk to past recipients, talk to other grad students in the lab, right? Believe me, they've applied for this. The grad students in your lab, they have been through it. They know what it's like. They're usually willing to help out an undergrad or a fellow grad student. Get help with your writing. These are difficult to write even if you're a strong writer. So definitely kind of make use of your resources. Anything else I should add?
No, I think my biggest advice is get started early. Even if you're a good writer, it never hurts to show lots of people your writing so that you can perfect it. Don't wait until a week or two before the application is due, because both Jennifer and I are very, very overwhelmed with lots of other applicants and we can't invest that time. So what I tell students is if I see that you're investing the time in doing this, I'm going to invest that time with you. But if you're showing up at my door 2 weeks before it's due, I've got to prioritize everybody else who's already been working on this. So start early. You're here, you're learning about this, that's the first step. Open up the application, start looking at the prompts. Even if you're only doing bullet points, that's a starting point. And you can come talk to Jennifer or I or some of the students who have won these awards and get their input, and then slowly start working on this. Right now, it's May. This isn't going to be due until, what do we say, October? Don't let that fool you. You can start this early and you will be a much more happier and more relaxed person. In October, you might be having to take your exams for grad school. You might still be applying to grad school. You're going to be in middle of midterms. Life happens. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. So the earlier you start, the better you're going to be in this whole timeline.
Starter. We keep hitting that, but seriously, every year Gladys and I have people who show up in the second week of October. I'm going to start this, and we're like, these are single space pages. This is 5 single space pages of content that you have to generate. That's a lot, guys.
I mean, this kind of summarizes what we've been saying. Do the panelists want to give any advice, anything that you wish you would have known before you started, or what you would share with anyone starting?
Yeah, I can. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I would just say to make writing appointments early because I know they get booked really fast. Well, I use the Graduate Writing Center, a little bit different than the ARC, but they still get full really fast.
There's more of them at the Graduate Writing Center than there is at the Undergraduate Writing Center. So yeah, we get booked even faster.
Nicholas?
Oh yeah. I was gonna say that coming with ideas, that's the first thing you gotta do before you can even start writing a proposal. And sometimes you come up with some great idea, and I've had plenty of ideas shot down by my professor who found some paper from way back when that did exactly what I wanted to do. So meet with professors early so you can come up with an original idea that you are passionate to write about, because it'll make writing later on much easier.
And that is one thing. I like science. I enjoy reading about science. I cannot tell you if your science is good. I can tell you if it's explained well. But yeah, I'm not going to know what your PI is going to know about. Is there another paper in your field that's proved it?
They say start early, and I started in like August. I wish I started earlier. I wish I didn't do anything in the month of October because I took the GRE and I took the physics GRE and I didn't study for either of those really. So I would get it like super early. They can't, yeah.
I remember how stressed you were at the end of September.
Yeah, I'm still stressed. Yeah, that was, it wasn't fun. So start early, get it checked often. I think I saw Jennifer like 5 times, Gladis twice.
Well, here's our contact information. We have a few minutes. If anyone has any questions for us or our panelists, we are here.
I have a question.
Yes.
Hi. So I'm interested in pursuing a biomedical PhD. I'm not interested in doing clinical studies, but would that, I guess, hurt me in the application?
So my understanding is no, as long as you frame it correctly. I would definitely recommend talking to your PI, and if you can, grad students, because they'll have had, and your PI too will had to have done the dance about shifting what they're talking about to make it relevant to various funding agencies.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
What if we're not going into so I'm going to go into a 1-year master's program?
The answer to that is it's complicated.
I want to go into a PhD afterwards, but right now, as far as I know, I'm doing a 1 year's master.
I'd have to, maybe Gladys will know better than I do. I'd have to do some looking on the NSF website, and we may actually have to like email them. They do respond to emails. Gladys, do you know? Do they even look at 1 year masters?
It would depend on some master's programs are tied to a PhD program. So if you had that case where you were going to, I don't know, Vanderbilt University, and they have a master's program that leads you right into the PhD, then that could be a possibility. But if it's an independent master's and then you're going to apply to a PhD somewhere else, then it's not likely.
Okay, thank you.
The other question?
Yeah, I have a question. Should we create like first drafts of our general idea before coming to you guys? Or should we say, I have a general idea, how would I go about constructing this?
The drafts are really good for us because we can start to see where you're going, especially now that we're not meeting you one-on-one. We may still be in this, what do you call it, the zone that we're in. It'd be easier if you send it to us. We can look at it ahead of time and really optimize our time working together.
So my program works a little bit differently than Gladys's, so we don't look at stuff ahead of time. So one thing, I have absolutely worked with people who are at the beginning, who are like, what even goes in a personal statement? I can help you with that brainstorming. If you have some stuff, that helps because because often students don't realize what makes them interesting. So having a resume, having a CV, having some ideas of kind of where you want to go can be really helpful. Because Gladys works with the whole package, she often needs a little bit more information because we're just focusing on the writing. We can kind of start at a lower level. I like to call it zero draft because we're just kind of focusing on the writing.
Okay, thank you.
Jennifer and I work is that I help students in looking at the whole packet. You know, who are you? What are some interesting things? I give you an outline of what you should be writing. We talk about your letters of recommendation. And once you have a pretty strong draft, then I send you over to Jennifer to then really refine it even more.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I have a resource that I think would be good to share. So I went to Alex Ling's website. He has an NSF dedicated website, and he has successful essays on there. I can drop the Google Doc in the chat if you guys want, or you can Google Alex Ling NSF. For any physics people out there, he also has a physics GRE website, so that was helpful as well.
I really like Alex Ling because it's like a crowdsourced spreadsheet. So lots of different examples of successful application essays. So thank you for bringing that up, Tyler.
Yeah, and you'll be able to see like what they're kind of looking for in your field. Super helpful.
So here we have some additional awards that you can look at. There's lots of opportunities in the STEM field. So if for some reason the NSF is not the right fit, look at these other opportunities. Where is our contact page? Here's our contact information. So I, for one, am extremely busy right now, so I'm not going to start seeing students until probably mid-June. But we are recording this presentation. We will send you a copy of it along with our contact information, and I will give you a link where you can make an appointment to speak with me, probably by mid-June, and then we can just start going. And like I said, start early. It'll make your life so much easier, and you'll enjoy this whole process a lot more. If you're looking at applying to multiple awards, the deadlines are always like right around the same time. So if you're doing that, again, starting early will make your life so much easier, because I think every one of the panelists can attest how stressful those October dates can be for everyone, including us.
And that's when we're not in a pandemic. Heaven knows what it's going to look like this time.
Yes, yes. So if we don't have any questions, I want to thank our panelists and Jennifer for co-presenting with me. Again, this is an amazing opportunity. I mean, to walk into grad school with over $100,000, that is fantastic. We've also had students who've applied to other awards where NSF upfront will tell you that you cannot defer your award. If they give it to you, you need to take it and go. We have had students who have gotten something like a Fulbright, and there's a different term. They don't call it deferring. I can't remember what the term is, but there's a different term where you can say, I'm going to do something else. You have 5 years to use your NSF. So you can always push it a year later or two. So when we come to that bridge, we can help you maneuver through that. But I highly encourage you to, whatever awards are out there, apply to them. It's always fantastic to see students sitting there with 3 things in front of them saying, I don't know which one to take. And I actually had a student who was in that situation who applied to, I had it later on, there's a program called the SMART, and it's another award very similar to NSF. And she just couldn't decide which one. She's stressed out, but both of them are amazing. And she ended up turning down NSF for the SMART award, but it was the right fit for her. But who thinks that you can turn down $100,000? But again, if you play your cards right, you'll have lots of opportunities that you can choose from, and that's what we want to see you guys. All right, so I want to thank everybody for joining us. I hope that you found this to be useful to you. And again, we'll send you a copy of this presentation. Please go onto the NSF site, keep looking at it, download those prompts, start outlining how you would address them. And even if you decide not to apply for NSF, those same prompts are going to help you for applying to graduate school or other awards. So just get to the point where you're going to have a really strong personal statement that all you're doing is just slightly tweaking it for other opportunities. Okay. Jennifer, do you have anything else to share with them?
So you make appointments with myself and my colleague Jay Farago Spencer through the ARCS website. At least right now, the plan is remote for summer. Even if we come back to campus, I doubt very much we'll have you guys. So we'll be doing it via Zoom. One thing I do want to stress is, unfortunately, my program cannot work with alumni. Gladis's program is different. So if you're graduating in June, you might want to talk to us sooner rather than later so that you can work with us at least a little bit. Grad students who are, so if you're graduating in June and you're going to be a UCR grad student in the fall, you actually can work with the Graduate Writing Center over the summer. And they are also great, and there's more of them. So I'm always low-key jealous of them in the summer. Although they don't have cool cat PowerPoint presentations, so.
Okay. Do our panelists have any last words of advice? To support.
Good luck.
Start early.
Good luck. Yes. Good luck.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much. We look forward to working with you in the future. Bye-bye. Thank you, panelists.
Bye.